Hey, this is Frank. You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. Do you ever feel like you have friends who sometimes just don't get each other? This is a podcast that I recorded with two of my friends, Jake and Noah. We find out the hard ways we struggle to communicate better and sometimes succeed, but sometimes not. For years, the three of us have talked about communication and how it's sometimes easier said than done. Even when we're trying to be understanding, our well-meaning intentions often get lost in translation. We decided to share these conversations with the world. Join us as we find out what happens when three friends try to learn how to really talk to each other.
So last night we were over in O'Fallon all day yesterday, and we started heading back at, I guess, about 8:45. And most of the fireworks displays, they start about 9. And, we were just driving through a lot of the country, down highways and the byways and, the rivers and the streams. And down the interstate. And I would say that we probably, passed or went through and under, in some situations, probably around 10 fireworks displays. And, I was kind of feeling bad for not making a concerted effort to get my son to a fireworks show. He's 6 years old. That's when they're still fun. And then I was like, no, this is actually more fun to drive through 10 fireworks shows and to not even know if you're going to see one and just keep watching the sky and then be like, whoa, yeah, there's a whole show over there. And eventually we got close enough to one that we went ahead and stopped on the side of the road and just watched it. And that was a lot of fun. But do you guys remember when fireworks were cool?
Honestly?
You were never a child, I know. How about you, Frank?
I feel like we should give Noah a chance to express that in his own way.
Noah, how do you want to express that you were never a child?
I mean, I was simply going to say I don't know that I ever truly enjoyed fireworks displays.
Right.
It always felt like we would always go down to the lake in Decatur when I was a kid, and I remember not liking it. Too many people. It was way too crowded. It was loud and obnoxious. People were loud and obnoxious, and then it was difficult to get out of there at the end.
Oh, gotcha. Maybe that's, because I similarly was not a child for very long. But I'm wondering, based on what you said, if the reason for this is that I actually grew up on East Lincoln Avenue in Decatur, Illinois. And it was a dead-end street, and we would walk down to the dead end, which was basically this giant hill that would, if you took a step too wrong, it would careen down over Lakeshore Drive. So we basically were it was in our backyard, and we would just sit at the top of this hill and watch all the people and all the traffic and everything. Basically, we were looking down on Paul's Puttin Place and all that area. And yeah, we could just watch the fireworks from there. So zero investment, zero, pull out issues. We could pull out, and I was doing that at a young age.
And you think that's what made you not be an adult or a kid?
No, I'm saying the cost to benefit ratio at that point was such that it was an easy choice. You just go, yeah, I love fireworks. They're great. But maybe when we moved from there and we had to go, get in the traffic, maybe that's when I stopped liking it. My ROIs were too low.
Jake's the only person who uses terms like ROI and KPI.
ROAS.
I mean,
I'm all about it.
Who says those things?
ROAS. Return on advertising spend.
Oh. I thought you were the only person who uses the term SOAS as well.
No, a lot of people use that term in the medical profession. Physical therapy, that sort of thing. Hey, you guys don't have your videos on today.
Is that important to you?
It's just different, I feel like I'm just talking to myself and a couple of gray rectangles.
Here you go, man.
Noah, are you lounging on your couch today?
I'm on my couch. I'm afraid that we're going to see space again.
Are you naked?
No, I'm here.
No, good.
I'm lounging.
Why
on the
would you be
couch.
afraid we were going to see space? I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
Space is awesome.
It's true.
Yeah.
The final frontier.
Is
You
it
should
though?
be in space.
I'm not sure. Have you been there?
I've not. I mean, space
Do
is
you
sort
think
of
there will
like
be
the.
a frontier after it in your life?
Well, it's it depends on which direction you're thinking. Like, space is like the
Okay.
infinitely outward.
You're
The
thinking
self
the
is like
middle
the
of it.
infinitely inward.
I was thinking the infinitely inward, outward, like the middle of the earth.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that's not as infinite. Well, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. We'd have to get there, find out what's going on in the mantle.
There was a
Or
movie
past
about
the
this.
mantle. The core.
Yeah.
Aaron Eckhart,
What'd they find out? I can't remember.
2003. Well, basically, the core started spinning the wrong direction in this film, and it caused issues with the Earth's EMF field. Everything started going crazy, especially the birds. And people with pacemakers, dead. Crazy stuff was going on. So they went into the Earth's core, and they had to set off a series of nuclear explosions that would then get the Earth's core spinning in the right direction again.
That's right.
Yep.
How do you feel about Aaron Eckhart?
You know how I feel about who.
It's
What are the feelings about this guy?
his face makes me not want to watch his movies.
That's why he was Two-Face, man.
Yeah.
It was perfect. Well,
That
except for
feels-
Thank You for Smoking. That was a gem.
It was an okay movie. Jake was very outraged by that statement. You couldn't see on the video. Yeah.
What?
Outrage.
I was talking to the listeners. All
Oh.
three
I
of
used to
them.
be a very enrageous person, but then I decided to be outraged.
Hmm. You guys notice how gray I'm getting lately?
Yeah, you're becoming me.
Getting super gray.
Gray's my favorite color.
Last weekend? I think it was last weekend. Or the previous. I don't know. Recently I got a haircut. And normally when I've been gray sort of up front for a long time. And so when I get haircuts and they, hair starts to fall onto the thing, I'm used to seeing it gray. But when they use the clippers on the back, it's always been still dark. And this time around.
Do you mean the hair bib?
Yeah, that thing, the bib.
Why do you call it by its name?
The
'Cause
apron?
I couldn't
The hair
think of the
bib.
name.
Are we
It's a hair
talking
bib.
about the little tie that they put around your neck, the choker,
Hair
before they put the apron on?
hair bib apron.
The hair bib apron.
Hey, babe.
But this time,
All right, go on. Yeah.
This time she started in the back with the clippers, and that hair started to fall down, on the bib, and it was super gray in the back, and I was like, oh no, that's the first time I'd ever seen it that gray in the back. And then that was on a Saturday, and then I had a lesson with Alejandro, Spanish lesson, on Wednesday, and I've been having lessons with him on video for over 2 years now. And then it's the first time ever he went, "Are you getting gray?"
You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. In these episodes, we're learning. We don't know what we're doing yet, and sometimes it shows. We think there's beauty in being a beginner, and we're learning from them, so we publish them. So thanks for listening, and rest assured that there will be better Unbecoming Platypus podcasts ahead.
And I went, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "No, I've never noticed before." So I think it just happened overnight.
That entire
Doesn't make you
time,
feel.
But do you have a thought, Jake?
I did. Well, yeah, but I mean, we could get into your feelings instead. No, all I was going to say is that you kept saying clippers in the back, and I heard it in the melody to Old Town Road. It was like, clippers in the back. Grays start to attack. No, I'm feeling old. Yeah. Bull riding and boobies.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't. I honestly don't feel too bad about it. I still have my hair, so some people don't. And and I don't think it looks too bad. I do wonder what I'll look like when it's completely white. But hopefully I have a little bit of time.
I've seen people like that.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, my brother-in-law has been completely gray for like 20 years or something.
Nice.
So I pretty much haven't known him when he's not completely gray. So, and I don't think he looks bad that way. So hopefully I don't look bad that way either.
You could be a silver fox, man.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to get grays in my beard, I keep being told. Apparently the salt and pepper is like primo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Chef's
hoping it
kiss,
works for
they say.
me.
Really?
We'll see.
Someone said that about your beard?
Mm-hmm.
Gray hairs. Chef's kiss.
Absolutely. I didn't know what it meant. I had to ask for clarification.
Do people suffer from face baldness? Is that something you have to worry about?
Hey, I don't. So, just to go ahead and say it here, I'm only bald because I have too much testosterone. Yeah, when there's too much free testosterone in the body and it converts into dihydrotestosterone, what it does is it hardens the cells on the top of the head and it creates this sort of crust. So it's not that I can't grow hair, it's that the hair follicle itself has a hard time penetrating that crust.
Jake has a crusty head, is what I just heard.
Yeah, he is a very... Here's what I'm trying to decide right now. Do I want to be the person associated with this science or not? And I don't. And so I can't say anything. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to do that. All right.
Do you think does our podcast...
I don't think Jake has the most correct expression of what the truth is about why. Yeah, okay.
That's
I'm willing to go down that road, though, because I don't want to be the guy who has the correct expression.
Does our podcast run the risk of perpetuating science facts or non-facts?
All I'm trying to say is, when you see how bald I am, it means I'm more of a man than you are.
It doesn't mean that.
Testosterone's an androgen. Androgen is Greek. It means man. So, come on.
It means in that area of your skin, you have more androgen receptors.
Are you taking my joke away?
To me.
This was never supposed to be accurate.
Come on.
Everything you say is meant to be accurate.
So accurate.
Yeah. For the purpose of the joke.
So I just realized, and maybe
I think you're more of a man than Noah, based on your head.
For sure, and Frank. Right. As Frank and I both have hair.
Yeah, you're both basically walking around.
Less. Look at this, man.
Oh, you're becoming a man. My buddy, he's growing up.
I should have realized this many years ago, but I now understand how Jake looks at science, and it's through it's through the lens of language.
Yeah.
So all of Jake's quote unquote science knowledge is actually just him breaking down the root of words.
Well, what was that argument? I can't remember. Do you remember what it was, Frank?
Maybe if you give me one more detail.
It was something about words are all made up or something.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Everything gets the meaning you ascribe to it, whether you realize it or not.
Well, absolutely. But there was a really funny argument that was just premised upon terrible logic at some point in a group chat, but I don't remember what it was. It doesn't matter.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Any more details than this?
Something about words.
Great.
Yeah. Start your searching. So, what do you guys... The word words might work. It's not like we reference words that often. I mean, that's so meta. Is it meta or meta?
It depends if it has data after it.
For you too?
No, I was just reminding
I think
you
that
of
was
your
a
own
callback.
policy.
It was. I really like when we
All of
call
our
out our callbacks.
all of our OG listeners would remember the
That's
metadata.
right. The OGs.
Our OGs from last episode. 2 episodes ago, something like that.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna. My favorite thing, and I really hope this happens. I hope we do this podcast for many, many years, and we
Aw.
continue to call the episodes Origins.
This is actually
Yeah.
just Origins, the Unbecoming Platypus. But that makes it so easy to do spin-offs,
good.
you know? Origins, the Becoming Platypus, you know?
That's right.
Options.
Became.
Yes. Became the origins.
We finally did it. We became platypus.
Yeah.
You know.
Sometimes when I publish the podcast, I'm like, should we stop calling this origins at some point? But then you have to record all the mixed down tracks again. Well, who's doing that? So,
Well,
origins for life.
I think episode 20 is the milestone, right? At some point between now and then, we really need to get our shit together and like actually have some sort of format. Maybe choose a topic before we get into the episode. Do anything different than episode 1 at all. And, you know, then
Hey, our sound quality's gotten better.
episode
Yeah,
5.
I think so. I don't know about the last 2 remote recordings, but
I'll tell you what, they're less echoey.
It'd be better if you would actually carry your mic with you.
hey, man, it's not about that. It's about the little adapter. It's about the little adapter that connects the mic to the computer that I didn't carry with me.
You could purchase
Hey, man.
those. So, what's on everybody's mind this week? Since we don't have topics,
we do have a format that has emerged without any intention, which is that we usually start with the word of the day.
Oh, the word
Type
of
vibe.
What is the word of the day today?
Priapism.
Androgen?
I shouldn't have called it. We usually talk about words.
Oh,
We do talk about words.
Wait.
We have done that. The word of the day was words. You may recall from back there.
Anyways, the Merriam-Webster.com, not a sponsor, word of the day is prowess.
This is episode number
Nearly what I
14 of the Origins Unbecoming Platypus, where we talk about how we talk about words.
Yeah.
Prowess. Can you use that in a sentence for me? I mean, unless it's too difficult.
That was the biggest silence we've ever had on the podcast.
A lawyer of great prowess.
Okay. Now could I have the definition?
I don't know why their word of the day page doesn't include any traditional elements of the dictionary. But
Language of origin?
distinguished bravery.
A prowess is a female version of a prow.
That's what I was going to... Damn it. It's too slow.
Extraordinary ability or distinguished bravery.
Oh, yeah. The lawyer of distinguished bravery. Just like I always hear.
Despite the car's handling prowess, the suspension is forgiving enough to work as a daily driver.
What? All right, guys. What do you think is the bravest thing someone we know is doing today?
This feels like a Frank question.
Victimized by this question.
What do you think?
Thing.
What
Yeah.
do you think is the hardest thing one of our friends is going through, and what makes them brave
Don't
about that?
change it.
It makes them what?
What makes them brave in doing
About
so?
What makes them brave
What
about
happened?
that? Speaking of bravery, you know what I've been thinking about recently?
Hey, I want to commend you. Your transitions are getting better. That was way better than it was still a little bit abrupt. But at other times in the past, you have gone from, a complete joke talking about androgen to anyway, guys. What's the bravest thing someone's doing?
Yeah, you've gotten significantly better over the last 10 minutes at transitions.
Transitions better. Good job.
I do my own
What-
sound effects. Thank you very much.
Jake, what have you been thinking about?
I've been thinking about what happens when a person lets go intentionally of a coping mechanism that they've used for a very long time, and the sort of void that leaves, and the work that it takes, but also sort of the exciting stuff that happens when all of a sudden you're just dealing with this sort of empty space. You guys ever dealt with something like that?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure I have. I got to think about. I've gone through a lot of change in my life, and I think a lot of that is giving up something intentionally. But I don't know that I thought about it in those terms at the time.
Sure. Yeah, well, like we were talking about the Enneagram the other day, and we were talking about how, I'll use myself as an example. I wouldn't want to type you guys. And, but, like the 7 sort of, compulsively moves toward, the head, planning into the future, sort of compulsively being happy as opposed to experiencing whatever's happening in that moment, even if it's just nothing. The planning is more fun than just the boredom that comes along with that. And so like this intentionality of letting go of that really leaves this vacuum. And if you pay attention to what's going on, there's this sort of tug of war that's like, you could just do that thing that you have always done and, get a little bit of relief or what have you. But when you push past that enough times or for long enough, like at the risk of hyperbole, it feels like for me being a different person in a different reality. Like legitimately. Sometimes I feel as though I have stepped into a new layer or a different layer of consciousness, and I'm developing skills in a totally different realm. As opposed to sitting there and, compulsively going to those thoughts, all of a sudden now I'm, working on skills like meditation, or I'm actually exploring things through something like somatic experiencing. What does it feel like to feel this icky, angry feeling? Stuff like that. And it's thrilling, honestly, to be experiencing something so outside of what I had experienced for 3 decades of my life, and to be like, whoa, like there are so many more novel experiences. I was kind of getting bored with this whole like being Jake thing, but Jake can be so many other things. So I've been really excited and enjoying getting rid of those old coping mechanisms.
Is this like recent? Has this been going on over the last
Oh,
When I
it's
say recent, I mean like literally in the last, several weeks. Is this something that's been going on for the last year, 2 years?
the thing that I described right there, I think, has been over the last 2 or 3 years, kind of a slow build that's really sort of climaxing in the last few months, really since I started paying more attention to it. Another thing, though, is, I've mentioned before that I stopped drinking. I was, I was drinking pretty regularly, never large quantities or anything like that, but, well, not never. Every once in a while, it would be a large quantity, and that was like, oh, that is terrible. I never want to do that again. But usually it was like 2 drinks. And what I realized at some point was I was using that as a sort of vehicle toward modification of consciousness. And I would often, I called it the end, something like mindful intoxication. I would have those couple of drinks, and then I would just sit with my thoughts and really explore inner realms quite a bit. And I honestly kind of credit that change in consciousness to a lot of the growth that I've experienced. So I took this chemical change and tried to use it in a positive way until it got to a point where I was like, this is more negative than positive, and I need to give this up. But there was a part of me that didn't really want to relinquish that potential and that catalyst that had actually shown some positive results. So when I got rid of it and just said, yeah, I'm done with this. This isn't doing anything I want it to be doing anymore. I was kind of thinking, all right, I'm going to have to find another mechanism or catalyst for growth. The result, though, was this thing that I kind of keep mentioning, is that I've been doing so much inner work that was almost like my natural state. And without that consciousness change, I find myself really just peering out these eyes and experiencing the world around me. And now it's like taking those baby steps in the outside world, the external world. And I'm taking that stuff that was inside and kind of exerting it outwardly. And that's what I mean by different realms. Like, I know myself very, very well internally, but now it's paying more attention to what's going on outside. And
Do you have examples?
They're less coping mechanisms and more like just learning new skills. Do I have examples? I did the other day. I was thinking about it and I was like,
I mean,
oh,
I hear your
that's what I mean.
words and I think I grasped them,
Yeah.
but I'm curious what that looks like.
Well, I
Grasping
think
them
that
does not seem straightforward to me.
well, yeah, let's wrestle with it a little bit then. For me, the internal stuff was more about like figuring out the whys. I think I was kind of obsessed with, okay, I have this response because of this. Let me find out. It's that thing that Frank has mentioned before. Is this the first time that this has ever happened? And always going backwards, always going down. And now, being less interested in the why, I'm out here just kind of embracing what's happening. It's less the meta narrative and it's more just enacting and manifesting in the world, which is not something I ever really felt like I was doing. I felt like I was, I've mentioned before that I felt like I was the character in a book, and I've felt this shift toward becoming the author of the book. And really, all of this is kind of going hand in hand. I'm less like looking at the input and more focused on being the output. But concrete, it's hard to say at this point. At this point, I just notice that it feels like I took off a pair of sunglasses and I'm looking at the same elements around me, but they all look different.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me. I don't know. It seems It feels to me like a lot of words, but that doesn't mean anything except that I would use less. Because that's how I came to it, probably, but
yeah,
it's just something like you can spend a lot. This is how it feels for me, and maybe you're talking about something different, so just let me know.
Sure.
It feels a lot like you are, or I am. I was living this life where I was analyzing a lot of things and ascribing meaning to things. And for a while, I thought like, the path is I'll just ascribe good meaning to things. But the freedom really came for like things do not need meaning. They just are. You can ascribe meaning to them, but like just being, a cheetah seems to run and do his thing without needing to feel like he's an important, specifically designed creature. I don't know what cheetahs feel like inside, but I don't know if they feel like they have a purpose.
Sure. Yeah, I think that it is similar to what you're talking about. And like I said, I'm obviously fumbling over my words. It's still kind of a new experience for me. And I'm not spending a ton of time analyzing it. So it's hard to encapsulate. But I did notice that yesterday. I was thinking about how the old version of me would have looked at some of my current actions and said, wow, you're so self-centered. You're so selfish. You're really not trying to make the world a better place. Look at all these people who are suffering. Why aren't you doing anything to help? Are you just becoming apathetic? And it was like, no, the experience that I'm having is not apathy at all. The experience that I'm having is legitimately what you said. It's taking all of this meaning, all of these sort of moral frameworks and judgments off of things and just saying, I am being what I need to be at this moment. And that's going to result in the world being a better place. I don't even know what that looks like right now, but I do know that right now my work is on myself.
Yeah, I don't know. It also kind of feels like to me a little like not optimizing for something or like oftentimes not. Yeah, often enough that I think about it sometimes. When I'm going to share something or create content or something online, I know the things to optimize for that will make it most liked, I can create a post on Twitter today that will generate hundreds of followers. But it's not usually what I post because it's just not I don't care about that metric. And it doesn't feel authentic or something. I don't know. It's not really what I want to do.
Yeah.
So when you go to post content online, if you have in the past analyzed a lot of factors, you can pretty well know a recipe that will get a lot of engagement and generate a bunch of followers or whatever. But these aren't like true fans. These posts are not deep. They don't involve who I am as a person necessarily. And the followers I get will unfollow later if I post something they don't like in a heartbeat. Versus if I do this sort of more authentic posting, this like sort of who I am, way less followers get, like a couple people might like it, might get follows. It's not like the recipe for engagement is followed, but it feels like me. And then I get followers who like message me, want to know how I'm doing, people who like have genuine interest. And I don't care that much about followers in general, but if I'm gonna, I certainly like the ones who seem to be like fans in my corner more than the ones who just are liking the next popular thing on their feed. Anyways, I don't think that much about content. That's what my point is. And I think I could get trapped in it and make it a metric thing and analyze it.
but I just sort of try to make it a fun, authentic part of sharing my life. And I think it's similar to what you were talking about, Jake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's actually an interesting framework to press it through. I hadn't thought about it in terms of like optimizing, but when you said that, I started thinking about like specialists in the biological sphere and how evolution works. And it seems to be that, given any drastic shift in environment, it's those that are the generalists that actually thrive ultimately in the environment. So if I think about what coping mechanisms are, coping mechanisms develop in very specific environments. And at the point when they first develop, they're the most adaptive thing that the being can kind of come up with to get through that environment. The environment changes, and now instead of it being the prison that you're in, the coping mechanism itself becomes the prison because it doesn't allow you to truly thrive in the new environment that you've brought yourself into. This is obviously very, very different than what you were talking about, but it's definitely the thought that sparked is that, I remember reading the book by Russell Brand. What is that called? It's not Rehab. It's,
12 Steps. I don't know what it's
called,
but
that 12 Steps book. Yeah, it's fantastic. And he talks about, after he goes through and gets clean, that, part of what he likes to do is to go to these rehab facilities and help other people and be a sponsor and things like that. And he said one of the most impactful things that he ever heard was the manager or somebody who was running one of these places saw a guy come in who was wrecked and totally drunk when he came in. And she said, "Good job. You figured out a way to get here. Alcohol saved you. You made it through. It's not working for you anymore, buddy. It's hurting you now, but you figured it out. You're so smart." And that had a really big impact on me as well. Like, we look at these things from, the positions where we are with our heads above water, and we look down at those who are drowning and we say, "Oh God, why don't you just come up for air?" But literally, for that person where they are at, that may be the drug, the chemical, the behavior that's allowing them to get through the terrible position that they're in. And I think it's just, I don't know if I want to call it the responsibility, but it is like the thing that sits in front of it. It's the decision that sits in front of every person who goes through any sort of healing journey. And that is that when you do bring yourself out of that place where you needed the drug snorkel to get you through, that you got to take that snorkel off, because it doesn't work as well whenever you're walking through the grocery store. It actually hurts you and makes it harder to breathe. That was a lot of mixed analogies.
Yes.
So, Noah, now that you have a better idea, I'm talking about alcohol and Frank's talking about authentic posts on Twitter. I'm curious.
Wait, what was I talking about now?
I have no idea. I'm still thinking about the music.
You just shook your head while I was talking.
That was the same song that was in my head.
Wow. So
what
yeah,
were you agreeing with while I was
what
talking?
Was the thing?
Though?
What was I agreeing with?
Yeah, you were like shaking your head up and down while I was talking.
Oh, that was just to make you feel like I was listening. No, I think the thing I was agreeing with is, like, I've recently I was going to say re-engaged on LinkedIn, which is not true. I'm not engaging with anybody, but just updating my profile and kind of taking a look around and stuff. And I hate that place because it all seems so fake. And so I think what I was agreeing with is sort of your idea that people latch onto formulate content that makes them feel connected to something that's happening that's good, or that maybe other people would like to. You know what I mean? And I think from their perspective, from the people that would like and follow because of that sort of post, those people are actually looking for community at the end of the day, but it's a community that they think should exist, not a genuine one. And I see this a lot on LinkedIn, this idea that I just don't understand this idea of professional networking is really weird to me. Specifically the stupid stuff that comes down like, oh, I just got a new job. Like, how many new jobs are you getting? Like, LinkedIn as a social media is very weird to me, because if it's all centered around that sort of thing, focus on your job, not sharing cross industry or whatever, or sharing your new opportunities or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's so weird to me.
Yeah. Some people's job is to share across, like, intra-industry, certainly.
Sure.
So,
That's so weird. I think that I would have held and I mean, I still do. Like, I have a hard time engaging on something like LinkedIn. It feels very disingenuous to me. But like, if I take this whole concept of moving from the internal to the external, I actually see more value in it than I ever have. Like, my view or my perspective on myself has always been, there, I haven't really existed in the world. I haven't existed in my body. I haven't existed out here in this physical space very much. And as I progress further into that, I see myself more and more identifying with or capable of identifying with the things that I do instead of the positions that I hold. And by positions that I hold, I mean like beliefs and things like that, the internal stuff. Like, if I'm a person who is born really tending toward that external expression, and I'm told I'm a very creative person, maybe, and I get into this job and I want to share it, and then I start to see those shared ideas proliferate and create these really interesting new industries or concepts or things like that. Like, that to me is a really cool way to exist in this physical space. I think that there's also a lot of faking it. Maybe it's faking it till you make it, that sort of thing. I don't really know, but it's a lot of people doing what they think they're supposed to do. Absolutely. But the concept itself of sharing ideas intra industry, like that in itself is cool to me and creates new ideas and ways of being.
Maybe to try to put better words to what I was saying, I have been thinking a lot about content and content creation and that sort of thing because of stuff I'm considering with Amy. And I mean, even my work, I suppose. I struggle with everything I do, like in marketing, for instance, comes down to what's the purpose of this thing. It's one of the things I say most to my team is, yeah, but what's this for? Because a lot of times somebody will just make something because they think, oh, this is what should be made. Do you know what I mean? Or it looks nice, or it's inspirational, or whatever. Yeah, but what's the purpose? Because in marketing, we're trying to drive an outcome. So you can make something that looks nice and maybe we'll get, to your point, Frank, engagement or followership or whatever, but is it going to convert? And so I look at all content from that standpoint, which is one of the biggest reasons I struggle making content, because coming back to this whole purpose conversation, I have never thought in terms of purpose. And I am not driven, you and I, Frank, had this conversation the other day very, very briefly about sort of purpose. And like, you do have this real desire to help people in what you do.
Yeah.
And you always have. And that's what drives a lot of your work with, medical devices and stuff like that, and software. And I just don't, it's not that I don't care about people. I obviously care about people, but I'm not driven by that that's not a motivation for me. And so I really struggle when it comes to purpose, because what I want is I just want to be free and have the freedom to do the things that make me happy. And that, I'm not opposed to helping people, but that's not my driver. And so when it comes down to content creation and these things and social media, just that whole realm in general, I think it's a big reason why I don't like it, because what's the purpose? If there's no purpose for me personally, I don't do it. And so I really struggle to do it.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
And I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not putting a value judgment on myself even for that, but that is sort of my hang up with it.
Like sharing it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't, it just is not doing anything for me. So I tend not to.
What?
That makes more sense why you, go ahead, Jake, sorry.
Oh, I was just curious, like, what drives you to share your life experiences throughout the day? Like, when we get together, we have some burgers in the evening or whatever, like, what drives you to tell a story about what happened to you that day to your friends?
I mean, I don't know. Probably just friendship.
Yeah. So, okay. So like some sort of connection or community or
Sure.
sharing of life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I'm not trying to help you in any way. I mean,
right.
It's, the purpose is not to make your life better necessarily.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I think of like genuine expressions of the self in social media, basically just as like this extension of what we do in the physical world. And that could be a flawed concept, but because I think it's just a different
That's
filter.
romantic. Yeah. That's romantic, but I don't think that's the case for most social media. If we re-listen to, it might be an interesting experience, re-listen to our social media podcast, that one of the first ones we did, and kind of rethink it. But I think I'm saying the same things that I said in that. To me, it feels purposeless a lot of the time. Your idea about sharing yourself authentically is very romantic, and I agree with it. I think it's great if that was what was happening most of the time, but it's just another industry, and that's okay. It's fine that people use it. I think it's great that people use it, and I think it's great that people can use it to make money, and I think it's great that people can use it to better other people's lives. I don't doubt that happens, but when it comes down to it individually, I struggle with it, because I don't have for me, there's no purpose behind it. And maybe I'll find that.
Well, that's sort of why I was asking that. Go ahead.
You can certainly find purpose in it by doing it. I don't know. There are a few that come to mind, but none of these. This does make more sense as to why you asked me one time. What do I get from it? What do I get from sharing, or what's it do for me, or something like this? And I was like, man, I've never even thought of this question. I don't know that I'm trying to get something from it, but there are some things you get.
It's less about what are you. My real question is, why do you do it? What's the purpose?
Yeah, and I think my answer is that I do it out of the absence of purpose, like essentially what Jake was talking about earlier. I do it because there doesn't need to be a purpose, and just a common part of modern life. What's the purpose of like eating food out of the refrigerator?
Yeah, that was sort of my question when I said, what drives you to do this in your everyday life? Like, there are things that humans just do, And it's really hard. I mean, we could like give it a purpose. We could say, oh, you share your life so that you create bonds because it's more likely for you to survive to the next day. And, you know, if you have friends, and like, we can give it all this framework, but when you really strip it away and you just look at what humans do, they share. They are social by nature. You can't stop them from doing it. And that doesn't mean you have to do it in a social media setting. There's no prescription here. It's just, I think that as people move more toward this digital space and exist in it and have more of their life in it, they continue to do what humans do, purposeful or purposeless, either way.
Yeah, there are at least two clear benefits that I see from social sharing that I think you might like, Noah, in some way, which are you get like instant travel. You know, there are just an unlimited number of people who might see and connect with you from all cultures across the world. I mean, I have people who send me like recipes. I have a Sicilian follower who he sends me recipes to try. I wouldn't interact with, or like they're his family's recipes. And then one time we talked about the difference between like working for yourself and working at an employer, and this sort of like self message and like mission, and how that sort of helps humans to stay on task. Like you know, a lot of businesses sort of fail because it's one person and they can't generate momentum on their own for long enough. But if you're sharing what you're doing, then you gain followers or people who like it and talk to you about it, and you sort of are generating momentum self through others. So those are two areas that seem like high value. I don't think I think of those things while I post, but
Yeah, that's interesting. I think when I was younger, I valued connection a lot more than I do now. I don't know what that says about me. Again, not a value judgment. I just don't know. I haven't put enough thought into it to know why that is necessarily.
yeah.
But I think my main motivator now, and it's been trending that way for years now, is freedom. Everything I do is for freedom ultimately. I mean, even my job, which is ironic because it also creates some prisons, but my job pays me money, and money gives me a certain freedom to do things that I desire to do, right? But it creates other restrictions that then, you know, mentally I have to fight and go, okay, I need more freedom than this. But I think that's what I'm really fighting for. And I mean, I truly, if you said, what would you do every day? Like if you could wake up and do anything, I truly don't have an answer for that, except for I want the freedom to do whatever I feel like doing in that moment. Like I want to wake up and do, you know, the thing that feels great that day. Do what you think is cool, as my friend Frank would say.
Yeah. It's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think I don't think that's a bad motivation. I just think that's different from a lot of people on some level, because I think a lot of people do have more of a purpose-driven sort of motivation.
Yeah, I think freedom is one of those it can easily be an infinite game, and there's some danger in that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can define what freedom is, it probably comes with a lot more freedom than if you don't define it. Like, I mean, literally define it. Like, if I have $100,000 in liquid cash, then I have freedom. Then you can just get that, and then you can do whatever you like. You know, if my job sucks, I'll leave. I won't hesitate. I'll move on. But because at the end of the day, I think you will want to do a job. You are, you know, like it. At least for me, I thought for a long time, like I would just like not want to work, but that's not true of me. I want to work.
I think that's true of me as well.
Yeah. So if you can define it, like this is what does it take to be free? And I don't know if I had to define it for you. I think it involves being with another person somewhere. So
No, I mean, I think there are several aspects to it. I think there is monetary freedom to not be tied down to one thing. But I think it's not about, I think travel's an aspect of it. I think learning is an aspect of it. I think that's the thing that I've really started to learn about myself, is that I really enjoy diving into different things, doing a semi-deep dive into things, and then moving on from it. Not moving on from it forever, but finding connections. How can I move from this thing to the next thing? What's the connection there? And then how can I continue to do that? So a traditional job gets really boring for me in that way, because once I figured it out, now I want to move on to the next thing. And so I think that that's a big piece of what freedom looks like for me. I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly what that is, but I think that's a big piece of it. It's way less about money. Money is a tool that can allow some of that, but I don't have massive financial goals or anything. And I get really sort of turned off by the whole financial lust that happens. Like, I see a lot of stuff on YouTube and stuff about people making money and needing to be as rich as possible and all that stuff. And that really turns me off, because it's not how I think.
Yeah. I don't have high enough aspirations to, like, I don't have high wealth aspirations. And I suppose I'm pretty financially savvy, but I just have numbers that I'm like, I just want to be able to feel like I can do what I want with my life. And, if I don't want to have to show up somewhere if I hate it, and I don't want to have to take work that sucks just so I can make money. But I don't want to own any big buildings or anything. That's not really in my...
Yeah, that episode where we did the value of time test, I liked something you said, Frank. You used the term pure decisions. I think that stuck with me. Like, this concept of making pure decisions, it doesn't mean that I won't ever strap myself down to something. It just means that I chose to do it instead of feeling like this desperation and like I had to, because I didn't have a choice. So yeah, there's definitely freedom in that.
Yeah.
And in the same way, the freedom being an infinite game thing, like, freedom quite necessarily does not have a definition unless you have the concept of boundaries. Those boundaries do actually allow you to embody the freedom. A person who just says, like, I'm going to live my life and have no sort of direction or anything like that, honestly, that leads to a whole lot of depression in my experience. It's a sort of aimlessness. And I don't know, I'm finding that for me, the closer that I get to being to making pure decisions, if even only conceptually at this point, because I've projected myself into a place where I've got that sort of abundance mindset, if you will, that says it's all going to work out. I'm going to take the next step, and that's going to lead me to the next one. It's fine. I'm realizing that I want to share the enthusiasm and excitement that I have for life. I used the next step planning for so long as that coping mechanism, but it has also, if I look back on my life retrospectively, it's allowed me to take myself in really cool directions and far away from where I began. And to help people harness that, there is a certain purpose there that I feel, and I want to share it. And I think that's the current direction I'm taking.
Yeah, I like it.
So if I were ever to develop any sort of social media presence, which I currently have no plans for, doesn't mean it couldn't happen tomorrow, but I think that would be the purpose. Like, I actually have the purpose in my head. I just don't have any desire to manifest that until I have some of the groundwork laid.
So where can people find you online?
I have an Instagram account.
Jacob Opotamus on Be Real?
Yeah, that's right. Jacopopotamus. Get on Be Real, y'all. It's the realest place on the internet.
We're
This
definitely
podcast
not
is
sponsored
not sponsored
by Be Real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think the free pure decisions made freely. This is good. This is like a good place to spend time getting freedom around. I really think the world works better if everyone can make free, sort of pure decisions. You end up like, I don't know. I know there are tons of employees who feel like they hate their job and they hate their boss, but they can't leave. And there are tons of bosses who feel like everything's okay because no one leaves.
Mm.
And if these people could actually say, this place is terrible, I'm leaving, then the place might get better. But no one can make pure decisions because they need the money right now. And so, it just like circles on itself.
Yeah. It's one of the hangups I have with your do what you think is cool. Because it's not that I don't agree with you. I just think that it's not that easy.
Oh, yeah, it's not. That's true. Still do it.
Sure. This is actually really interesting that, all right, we might cut this whole thing out, but, certain frameworks for the economy, they're essentially like capitalism. And I'm going to say something that's going to make Frank terribly uncomfortable because it won't be
he never does it
based.
When he says he will.
It won't be based in a specific definition. I'm going to say something medical that is intended to be a joke. No, so like capitalism in some ways is premised upon infinite growth. You've got, or the capitalist system that we currently experience seeks infinite growth. It's like this company needs to increase its profit margins year over year over year over year over year. But the problem is that it exists in a finite physical space. We have a finite world with finite resources, all these sorts of things. So the two sort of compete in a certain way. We have, however, now created this digital space that is truly infinite for all intents and purposes. So I wonder if all of the systems that we've seen throughout history, in which you've got the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, the haves and the have-nots, the powerful and the not so powerful, kind of competing. I wonder if the digital space and the digital avatars that we are creating in some way will allow what we're talking about here, more people to have enough so that everyone is making pure decisions. It could be an interesting thing that hasn't historically been possible.
Yeah, so this evoked some reaction in me. I wonder if it's the one you thought. Why did you think this would make me uncomfortable?
Earlier I talked about androgens and it wasn't textbook. So I just mentioned something like capitalism and it was not textbook.
Okay. Yeah, that's not it then. Oh, I mean, kind of. It wasn't textbook for sure, but I feel like you missed the point of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is? Is that what
I'm making
textbook part?
Exactly. I'm making a point that is totally based in concepts and not any sort of textbook definition.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get past it and talking concepts, not in actually that wasn't the definition. So what you said it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
I'm talking about an idea.
I don't think the digital space increases people's ability as capitalists at all. But I could be wrong.
Really? I feel like it increases opportunity to a great extent. Where previously you may have needed to own property that had a ridiculous barrier to entry, now I can go and create a domain and my idea can become a reality with almost no money down.
Yeah, you could have made a lemonade stand with almost no money down too.
Yeah, you know what, though? I think there's a big difference in, and some people did, right? But there's also this.
That's the key to capitalism, though, that some people did part. But go
Sure.
ahead, sorry.
Sure. Again, this is an idea. Maybe relinquish what you're thinking of as capitalism. Maybe I should use some entirely different word. But
Right.
It does actually pertain in some ways. What I'm referring to, though, is that if a person previously in this system woke up for the first time as a human being and was like, I was born into a family of house builders, I was born into a family of roofers, right? It was like, This is what I do. This is my identity. The extent of what I think is capable, what I'm capable of, I don't even start to dream outside of that. This is just the system. Is it possible? Absolutely. Does it happen regularly? Probably not. I think that it happens more regularly when we see this digital space as not just a place to live, but a tool for creating things. Like the lemonade stand, literally, you didn't know how to build a business before, but everybody's created a Facebook page. Everybody's created an Instagram page. Like the act of participating is quite nearly the same as the act of building the business. So I think that the conceptual opportunity is far higher.
The access to education feels a lot higher.
Not even the access, like the ubiquity of education. I'm being educated just by consuming.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that does offer something, but I don't know, the ability to be online does nothing for the likelihood that most, it seems to me, I don't know, there's a lot of judgment here, so that's why I'm tripping over words. I don't know if I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a lot like the majority of people do not and try to increase their productivity. Yeah, they might read about it or watch a lot of videos about it. But on balance, like Warren Buffett used to walk around his neighborhood and sell candy bars as a kid, and most of us didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason he has a lot of property today. It's this same reason. And having a Twitter account or a Facebook account doesn't overcome the likelihood that people will produce a lot. And that's the key to capitalism. Like, if you want something, you can get it, but you're going to have to want it enough to change something so that you get it. And that seems to me like the essence of capitalism. And I don't think this is changed by the internet. Maybe education, but.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm getting at is like, you're right. Ultimately, without action, there will never be a reaction. There will never be a product. I simply think that there are compounding systems, and the creation is one system or one pressure. The motivation to create, that's another one. The belief that you can do it that leads to the motivation to try, that's the thing I'm pointing at. I think that there may have, and I think that comes with education, right? So it's all this sort of like framework of things. And all I'm saying is that with the education being as ubiquitous as it is, beliefs and the potential that we believe ourselves to have can increase to some degree. And
Definitely.
the barrier to entry for a business sort of perpetuates that belief even greater, even to a greater extent. It's like, hey guys, for $50, I can create a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever. And guess what? By staking out my claim on this corner, there's still infinitely more corners. Like everybody can have a corner in a digital space, as opposed to, oh, that guy over there, he got the prime real estate. I guess no other business is going to be able to do as well. And that's what I mean. There's just a certain level of equality and equity in a digital space, obviously the person with more advertising dollars is going to get the top spot on Google. Like that part, same. But in other ways, I don't know, that barrier to entry just seems to create social promotion a little bit easier than a physical space.
Yeah. Yeah, you can start, there are like way more connections, I think, but I don't know. It's the people like that everybody knows, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, whatever, Elon Musk. These people have the drive to become wealthy, to produce a lot. And often it comes from trying to solve some difficult problem. Elon Musk brought banking to the internet. Like, people don't even remember this about him, but
right.
PayPal wouldn't exist if it weren't for him in many ways. And electric cars to reality and space travel to reality. If you solve these sort of problems, you get a lot of money. That feels like capitalism to me, not if you get a lot of money, you can buy big buildings. That's can be true, but that's not what some people who get a lot of money do.
Yeah, I think that's capitalism at the extremes. Capitalism, I think, ultimately is seeing an opportunity to capitalize, right? I see an opportunity and I seize it. And that can happen at a large scale, a small scale, a local scale, a global scale.
It's freedom, and freedom does come with like people who express it in bad ways, but capitalism just seems like freedom to me. If you want, you can become cunning, you can become smart, you can provide value, but you get to choose. You can also just not go to work today if you want. This is a part of capitalism.
Yeah. I think we have different definitions that we're using here. I'm just talking about an idea.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
It's sort of the idea of, you remember whenever those advertisements that said you wouldn't steal a car, don't steal a movie. And like the big argument against that was, okay, but if you steal a car, you're actually taking something away from someone else. And if you steal a movie, oh, well, you didn't actually take a copy of a movie away from someone else. Obviously, you took potential sales away from a company, but it wasn't a physical item. So that other person, you didn't steal their property. And that's I think what I'm pointing at in the digital versus physical space is like previously, if I was born in a small town in the year 1900, yeah, I could have opened a store. I could have been the most capitalistic person in that town. I could have moved to a big city. I could have done these things, but like the difficulty, the barrier to entry, the path toward that really had to exist way up here in my imagination. And I had to get way more creative in order to achieve that. Now a person born in a small town in India literally has the entire world as their potential market. And, these barriers just aren't the same as what they used to be.
I disagree.
Fair enough.
The barrier to becoming capitalistic is that you get other people to give you money. It's still true. Whether you do it on Twitter or at the lemonade stand or whatever, you just have to get other people to give you money.
And what's the likelihood that you're going to think about getting other people to give you money? If there's more opportunity to do it, less opportunity? Do you think it's just an innate state that you're born with or you're not?
That you'll get other people to give you money?
That you'll want to?
No, I think it comes from being hungry, from wanting something you don't have.
Where does that come from? That's what I mean by innate state. Like
a lack of fish.
Okay, but a person who has a lack of fish in a small town, 100 years ago would be like, oh, I might die. I don't even know how far away the next town is. I will look for a way to trade. I'll do any sort of thing. But what the mind is capable of conceiving is the height of potential capitalistic opportunities.
Yeah.
And in a digital space, it's quite literally surreality. It is, I could fly in digital space. I could create things that have never existed before.
And how will it get you a fish?
Exactly. That piece is still in the head, but the market is larger. The potential for products, I used to be limited by what I could create with my own two hands. Now I've got an idea where I can piece together a piece of software and I can do things that hands never could.
So I think I see what you're saying, and I agree with it, but maybe I'm wrong. The business potential with the internet is higher than ever. The human likelihood to execute it does not seem changed.
Oh, I'm not talking about the human likelihood to execute it at all.
That's what capitalism is to me.
Sure. But here's the thing. If, I'm going to keep this going because I think that we're actually narrowing it down a little bit. If I'm born in a town and I think either I have to start a roofing company in competition with this other roofing company or become an employee of this roofing company, like, why would I compete in a very small market? Now, all of a sudden in the internet, I have the ability to start something of my own that could meet, surpass whatever this other company. I'm not even really competing in the same market. I live in Illinois. If I want to start a business in Washington and start scoping prospects there where there's less competition, I can do that. Knowing that, does it make it more or less likely that I take the first step toward trying? Like, we always have these competing pressures in our mind. What's the likelihood of success? If I didn't believe I could be successful, maybe I wouldn't have tried before. In a digital space, maybe I believe I can be more successful and more people take the first step.
Yeah. That seems fine to me.
So maybe what we believed
The first step
was,
seems so much different than generating revenue.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
I think
Possibly.
a lot of people take the first step. You can find a website for every. Do you know how many computer businesses there are in our town? Computer consultants and computer service businesses.
Well, sure, but we're still 30 years into the internet being as ubiquitous as it is. It's growing every single day. Like, what we see right now is potential. It's not necessarily what will be. But already we see tons of 12 to 16-year-old kids creating businesses. We didn't see a ton of that before.
Yeah.
I think with the greater potential, the greater opportunity, the greater knowledge of how to create something, or that being your own business owner is possible and even normal, is something we didn't have before. Belief is a very powerful force in that way.
I agree.
And maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I used to not think that I could do anything. Like I didn't think I was smart. I didn't think I was really going to be able to get a college degree, which is the height of potential whenever I was growing up. I thought I'm probably going to work in a factory like my dad did. I don't know what that specific social dynamic is called, but I'm probably going to become what my dad was. I'm going to be a coal miner's son. That whole idea, like, that's an idea that I don't know. It doesn't seem as normal to believe that anymore. And it hasn't for a long time. It used to be your last name was literally Kohler, Thatcher, whatever the last name was. This was your family's profession. You were born into your identity. It just doesn't seem as true anymore.
I agree with that. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the topic of today?
I think it would be a fallacy to say we had a topic.
What do you mean?
We did not have a topic.
We did. It was growth. Personal growth.
Oh.
Was it? No. Okay.
Was it? No.
Personal
I
growth.
I haven't had anything to say for at least the last 20 minutes.
I know.
20?
Brandy keeps looking at me like, is this the longest podcast you guys have ever recorded, or can we go see Kansas City yet? So.
I have no further questions, much like a lawyer who is brave of
Your
heart.
Honor?
Correct.
Brave at heart?
Jake is a prowess.
Have you guys
William
read Wild
Longshanks
at
will
Heart?
not. I have
read
read
Wild at
part of
Heart?
it. I've read part of
Oh,
it. And you want to
no.
know what's actually, I've said this ever since I read it back in 2007 or something. And the only thing that I actually enjoyed from that book was a sentence that was similar to this. The world doesn't need more people doing what they think they're supposed to. The world needs more people doing what sets their heart on fire. And so every time that you've ever said people should do what they think is cool, I always think of Wild at Heart.
Nice. That's what I'm channeling.
I'm assuming.
I've never read it.
I haven't read it either, but I'm assuming the book goes on to tell you what your heart should be on fire about.
It mostly just says that you're a man and women are women, and you should definitely make them subordinate to you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you need to go hunting and fishing and stuff, because that's what men do.
Interesting. Okay.
Hey, you go fishing sometimes. More often than you go to Lou Malnati's, I'd say.
Fair enough. I'm done.
Talk to you guys later. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for joining us, guys, this week on
The Unbecoming Platypus podcast, I guess.
Jake just bolted.
I saw that.
All right.
Adios.
Out.
Hey, it's Frank again. Thanks for listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. You can also check us out online at theunbecomingplatypus.com. We hope these conversations inspire you to improve your communication skills and deepen your connections with your own friends and loved ones. Until next time, this has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.